Thank you. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I know these are challenging issues, but to me, I look at, again, back to the consumer and localism and how do we protect those. And so, Ms. Barr, I was concerned to hear from our broadcasters as I look at some of the statements that AT&T has made writ large about satellite, or as I see how people are migrating to these partnerships, you know, whether that's Disney and ESPN, or, you know, I just see these big conglomerates trying to just control access to content, which worries me, because then I think, okay, we're just gonna, like, a bunch of people are just going to chop up ways to charge more to the consumers. But one thing I was concerned about, that broadcasters, even in the negotiations with their own networks, are having challenges keeping their revenue, as it opposed to then the network then using that to compete against them. So what do we do about that? Because we want the localism. We do not, as Senator Tester said, want to see a New York or LA broadcast if you're in Montana. You want to see local content. So how do we deal with this issue?
So first of all, I agree that negotiating with networks can sometimes be challenging, but I would point to the fact that many network affiliate relationships have been going on for decades. So they have come to a way of negotiating. I won't pretend that it's easy, but I will tell you that in my own negotiations, which I do personally with 4 different networks, that our negotiations have been civil. They're tough, as they probably will be and should be. They're paying for a lot of programming. We're paying for a lot of local programming. So there is a give and take. But we ultimately have come to our agreements. We work very well together. We support each other. So I don't see that the problem exists between the networks and the affiliates in this same way.
Well, I see a problem if you don't have local revenue that you can count on. And so I just want to make sure, I don't know, Mr. Schwantes, if you have a thought on this issue, but one of the reasons why I don't think a 5-year reauthorization is a wise idea is because I have no idea what's going to happen in the next 2 years in this space, the level of consolidation and change. What I want to get right is localism. What I want to get right is diversity. What I want to get right is driving down the cost to consumers if we can, because that, I think they deserve to have that level of competition. But what about this continued consolidation and how it's affecting this debate?
And that's a fair point, Senator Cantwell, and it's something we are concerned about. I mean, one of the pillars of our work is consumer choice, which I do think is related to localism and diversity, things of those nature. And Mr. Law makes an interesting point about bundling. What we hear mostly from video customers is we want choices. We want a la carte cable programming, which I know causes the hair to rise on people's necks.
Well, I think that's been in this committee. Senator Thin would attest along. The Commerce Committee has long heard this discussion, and maybe it's, you know, getting closer to that moment.
I'm well aware, the Local Choice Act. And I think it's a novel approach, and it goes back to the 92 Cable Act. There's no need to get into the details, but basically the long and the short of it is cable companies are obligated to carry local broadcast networks. Satellite companies are not. I mean, they have the obligation of, if they go into a market and they carry one local channel, then they have to carry them all. But it's more of an a la carte offering of the whole suite of local channels in the satellite package versus the cable package. And then it has the problem, the double effect for consumers of, well, I have to take the local channels because Mr. Law has to carry them, but then we have to pay the fees for it. And if you could disrupt that by making those local channels a la carte. The problem with that is, and in my experience on these very difficult issues, it's like an old sweater. You pull a string, the whole thing comes apart. So it's something that I think is well worth the committee's time to look forward to in the future. I agree that we shouldn't be doing this every 5 years. I think more comprehensive reform of, and everything's on the table, the 92 Cable Act, all of the various versions of STELAR, and let's do it.
Thank you. And to this, well, I'm going to say, I feel that one thing that's missing, and I get proprietary information, but there just shouldn't really be this level of ambiguity about whether someone, as Senator Tester is referring to, could or could not get content. Like, we should just be able to answer technically this question. And it should be clear to the committee. So hopefully in our further discussions, we'll be able to get that information.